Indra Ōtsutsuki, the son of the Sage of Six Paths, progenitor to the legendary Uchiha clan and predecessor to both Madara and Sasuke, is way stronger than you probably imagined. Indra is a character whose reputation amongst the fandom has been completely muddied due to the anime filler arc, displaying him having a copycat arsenal to Sasuke, when in the original manga, this isn't really implied to be the case. In the manga, Indra is unique and even more than that, really strong. So today I'm going to discuss why Indra Ōtsutsuki is not only cooler than you remember, but also a lot stronger than characters like Madara, Obito, and his opponents of discussion today, the Hokage. In beginning with Indra and detailing his power first, it should become evident how this match plays out. The 4 data book calls Indra a god of war and combat, a genius who is the son of the great Hagoromo, inheriting his power from birth as the rightful heir. He possesses the strength to overcome any obstacle alone, end quote. Being the rightful heir talent in comparison to Ashura, Indra would eventually grow to walk a path of his own, like how both Sasuke and Madara would later come to do. However, in Indra's case, he could actually stand on his own, as the 4 data book implies that he has virtually unparalleled levels of ability for his age, power that exceeds all others around him, including Ashura, who would find his power not in innate talent, but rather in the bonds of connection he made with people. Ashura, through the aid of not only his friendship but years of training, would finally reach Indra's once unattainable level of power with his Mangekyo Sharingan and Susanoo, where Ashura now gains access to his very own pseudo 6-path Sage Mode, resembling but not identical to Naruto's 6-path Sage Mode avatar he used to defeat Sasuke in the Final Valley. The difference particularly being in how both Indra and Ashura are proportionate to the typical perfect Susanoo size, and the avatar is still only the size of the Susanoo head, meaning it's much smaller. Ashura also resides in the avatar's belly when Naruto resides in its head, and most importantly, and the main reason as to why this isn't identical, is the 4 data book lists Naruto as the only user of the jutsu. Some creators have made the argument, or at least proposed the possibility of this being a baby Kurama, but I don't directly subscribe to that due to not only all the aforementioned reasons, but also they don't even look that similar outside of a basic shape and maybe color. The head splits off in completely different directions and has different lines. The tails sit more as a cape. The markings and arms and the amount of arms are different. There's 7 extra lines across the torso. I mean, Ashura's literally has a necklace, so this probably isn't Kurama. However, and more importantly, it does still possess things like truth-seeking orbs, showing just how divine Ashura has truly become just to battle Indra, who at some point later into his life awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, as Obito implies. Meaning that since Hagoromo also implies that Ashura, through training and the obtaining of bodily chakra, reached Indra's level and is now rivaling him, to where he would then go on to battle him in a final clash, and for those who know the manga well, would also know that Ashura by that point had already been gifted all of Hagoromo's physical power, and yet still isn't massively above Indra, meaning his MS likely awakened out of the resentment for Ashura being the chosen. The 4 data book states that there were embers smoldering within Indra over the fact that his father chose his talentless younger brother over his own genius. Black Zetsu would then whisper to the heartbroken Indra, stoking those embers into a hellfire, and from that point on, an inconsolable rage and hatred burned within Indra's troubled spirit, causing him to reincarnate for generations to come. Something that Sasuke with his Rinnegan would be confident in doing, opening up a side point for Indra's higher ends, but we can come back to that later. Anyway, this is befitting for how Indra is stated in the previous data book entry, and this one here, regarding the reincarnates to have power genetically inheriting all of Hagoromo's, which is likely in overall stats and not just ocular jutsu, as when they do discuss ocular abilities and senses, it's always explicitly stated as such. This beyond Hagoromo level is basically just confirmed by this fight with Ashura, as he would not only have years of power trying to catch up to Indra, or catch up to an Indra who had already been at Hagoromo's level, but then he gets Hagoromo's power plopped onto that level, and he would still have to face an Indra who would still rival that, which would be explained through the awakening of his MS. And therefore, this battle, each party, I guess, on each side is far exceeding Hagoromo's power, at least while alive, which was probably granted to Ashura in the form of Chakra, hence to why he got a TSO-wielding avatar. It's also critical to quickly note that the amp Ashura would have gotten from Hagoromo would certainly be greater than the unquantifiable amount given to both Naruto and Sasuke, which has been attributed to half of his chakra. However, there isn't anything supporting this idea in canon, and the specific amount of chakra is entirely ambiguous, whereas with Ashura, it's a guaranteed full amount. Hence then making this Indra then quite above a live Hagoromo himself by, again, quite a significant degree. However, the true power of this Hagoromo is rather difficult to determine through how while he did defeat Kaguya, this would be a much weaker Kaguya, and I've discussed this before, and the 10 tails that Hagoromo fought for months on end was a drained one at that. The Shikamaru novel states that, quote, the 9 tails still resided within Naruto along with the vestiges of the other 8-tailed beast. Naruto's body was, in a manner of speaking, the Jinchuriki for the 10 tails. In the last Great War, after becoming the Jinchuriki for the 10 tails, Obito had gained a power rivaling that of the Sage of Six Paths, the founder of ninjutsu, and in keeping the tailed beast within his body, Naruto also housed a part of the abilities of the Sage of Six Paths, end quote, which would imply two possibilities for Hagoromo. Either A, Hagoromo is relative to the likes of Jubito whilst alive, and Indra would hence be far beyond Jubito, which may be consistent with some later stuff, or option B would be that this statement is just from a perspective that doesn't actually know Hagoromo, because he isn't the founder of ninjutsu, but the founder of ninshu. However, most of this alive scaling that Indra is above can directly be applied to post-death Hagoromo, as he would unironically get stronger. However, although you could still say Indra is relative to this Hagoromo, I want to quickly dismantle why Hagoromo isn't omnipotent, omniscient, or anything along those lines. Hagoromo himself concedes that he is an anachronism. He's not something existing beyond time, but rather one flowing through time, linearly as a dead man. Over the passage of time, Hagoromo witnesses change in cultural traditions, notions, and languages. He directly relates the idea that he himself can't really see into the future beyond that of human prediction. He concedes that he never saw Naruto ending up like this. He uses hand signs for the summoning jutsu. He uses terms like likely, wouldn't when talking to Kakashi instead of giving the outright future possibility. I mean, he doesn't even know Naruto's language right the first time around. He most certainly doesn't cross time beyond what flows naturally. Secondly, the reason as to why Hagoromo could appear is directly given, but it's not out of his own free will. Naruto has Ashura's chakra and the Nine Tails chakra both embedded in his DNA. Sasuke has both his chakra, Indra's chakra, and then he gets the rest of Hashirama's Edo chakra, giving Sasuke Ashura chakra. So since all of these previously belonged to Hagoromo, it's just that so much of his chakra kind of manifested itself to where he would appear naturally, but only in the mind. Furthermore, later, when he actually appears in the real world, it's because this happens again, but on a much larger scale. Hashirama touches Madara's lower half, meaning that Ashura chakra, Indra chakra, and the 10 tails chakra all existed in one spot, so he kind of just manifested, but he couldn't stay there for too long. The reason as to why this actually happens is we know that Hagoromo was actually a 10 tails Jinchuriki for so long that the future 10 tails Jinchuriki would gain Hagoromo's chakra as well. And why do I say this? Well, when Naruto gains a better mastery of Kurama, the largest portion of the 10 tails, he gets KCM 1, KCM 1.5, and KCM 2, which all have Hagoromo's markings on his back, the order symbol, and the 9 comma symbols representing the 9 Biju. Minato also gets this when he gets KCM 2, meaning that this isn't just, happening due to Naruto being an Ashura reincarnate. Jubito and Jubidara also have these symbols. These Hagoromo symbols were actually what he kind of wore after gaining the 10 tails. Why? Because they gained Hagoromo's power through genetics. For those who don't know, genetics are deeply intertwined with chakra and its qualities, as chakra isn't just a single energy, but rather a unique base for different energies. Characters like Madara and Kushina were born with a particularly powerful chakra. Kakazu and Orochimaru have naturally vile chakra. Samehada is attracted to the quality and flavor of Killer Bee's octopus flavored chakra. And a good instance of this would be how when the 10 tails is split into each Biju, though they all kind of evolve over a millennia, but they don't completely change. For example, Killer Bee's V1 transformation has fangs and claws, something Yuki obviously wouldn't have, so that would be a genetic trait coming from either Kurama or Matatabi when they were linked. The third databook has a Q&A section. When asked about Gaara keeping his sand abilities despite losing Shikaku, Kishimoto responded that once it's ingrained in you, you can't take anything away, not even sand. Once you gain enough of Hagoromo's genetics, you then get true seeking orbs, such as when both Ashura and Naruto got it gifted. This is why when statements such as Obito claiming he has Hagoromo's power, he's not technically wrong, he literally does have it, but not because he's similar in power, but because he has a ton of chakra, or a ton of Hagoromo's chakra there. That's why Hagoromo was incapacitated for like 6 months due to half of his genetics being literally destroyed, when compared to Obito, he had yet to fully fuse into it, so he recovered in hours. This is the reason as to why Hagoromo can still somewhat interact with Earth. His chakra is still there, and a shitload of it. The entire Hagoromo clan, Senju clan, Uzumaki descendants, the Uchiha clan, Every-tailed beast, all of that is literally engraved in his DNA, which is still tied to Earth from the Pure Lands. Anyway, sorry if that felt briefly tangential, but I assume you could guess why I would need to discuss why Indra might not be beating an omniscient or omnipotent person, because, you know, there's obviously been a misconception that Hagoromo is an Ishiki slaying god of the Naruto verse, when he's simply never implied to be such, and is a threat much closer to that of Ten Tails Madara with one eye, which is the primary statement for scaling Indra. And it's post-death Hagoromo stating, quote, "If the power is concentrated within one person, it would run wild, and that person would become completely possessed by it. The current Madara is a perfect example. He's become just like Mother. Now, no longer Indra's reincarnate, he's attained Ten Tails' power and is getting close to me, and is trying to even attain my mother Kaguya's power." End quote. The primary piece for this statement, and hence Indra, is him stating that one-eyed Jubi Madara is no longer Indra's reincarnation and is trying to become more. I don't believe this statement is just talking about power, or just talking about chakra, or just talking about a lust for power, but rather an amalgamation between all of these. Hagoromo is asserting that Madara is now running wild with the chakra he's obtained that's far more akin to his own, due to not just possessing Indra's chakra, and that with he's also kind of stronger than ever before, and he's still trying to climb even higher, so they all kind of work. Now, if you were to interpret what I said I'd come back to earlier with Sasuke being confident in reincarnating, you could then supplement this with Kurama stating that Sasuke's Biju merging abilities is really impressive and on the level of a live Hagoromo, who would be much weaker than Indra by that time, meaning that if you want higher interpretations, Indra could be beyond Rinnegan Sasuke level in power, and then if you want to interpret the Hagoromo statement about one-eyed Madara as more in reference to the chakra types and external ideas instead of just power, then you could do that. But regardless, for a much more conservative approach, I think Hagoromo through this statement is at least clear that Indra is just under one-eyed Jubi Madara, but under his post-death state. Now, we know this to be the case, as even though Madara did obtain more of Ashura's chakra through taking chunks of Hashirama's power and body and chakra, it still wasn't enough to make him beyond Indra, and it's only now when he's also obtained the Ten Tails that he's finally surpassed Indra, meaning that Indra is likely far above any form of Madara pre-Ten Tails, which would include Rinnegan Sage Madara, who dominated a base EMS Sasuke and Kenjutsu, humiliated Tobirama, one of the key players in the Jubito battle with his quick wit and FTG, which didn't work on Madara like it did Jubito, and Madara here was planning on taking down Jubito in an ambiguous manner. Indra would be above the EMS plus 9 Tails form that rivaled the god of shinobi Hashirama, gashing his face open and forcing him to eventually kill Madara through shady tactics after their taijutsu clash didn't end in his favor. The 4 data book notes that those two were evenly matched, which would have been had to do like kind of an overall stat, with Madara being superior to the Sage Hashirama, who initially engaged him in hand-to-hand combat, while that Sage Hashirama was superior to EMS Madara and large-scale ninjutsu. This would also place Indra above the Edo Madara, whose perfect Susanoo is like certain death looking down upon the 5 Kage, as stated by the chapter synopsis statement. So, just so far, he's already above Sage Hashirama and Tobirama, which would then also likely mean he's above Tsunade, as she's a Sani relative to the likes of Orochimaru being generous, and he was relative to the same Hiruzen, who whilst in Edo wasn't a key figure like Tobirama in the battle against Jubito. Minato doesn't really have anything to offer, but albeit does have at least one, maybe, ability that's a fighting hope for these Hokage, and that's his ability to react to a 5th step 8 gates guy who was just flying around Madara, who is above Indra. The Sekizo barrage is stated directly in the 4 databook to be an increase of speed upon each step, and Guy was on the 5th one, meaning that he would be at his peak, and the counter argument to this, stating that he didn't kick again, presupposes that he needed to kick again to remain at a sufficient momentum, when in fact this most likely isn't the case, as he would have, and he never really passed through Madara quite yet, which is when he usually kicked, so he wouldn't have really had a reason to kick again. So yeah, I mean, Minato does have this, and like what Tobirama did in the Jibito battle, where they are much slower, they can still use the FTG to formulate plans of attack, only now their opponent is likely far beyond that, and isn't a nigh unconscious chakra monster, but rather a genius far beyond the likes of even Sasuke or anyone else for that matter, as Hagoromo implies that the difference between talent manifested itself in the most extreme manner, meaning that Indra has basically all of the possible talent, and Ashura had like no talent. And Indra was in fact so talented that even Hagoromo, after naming Ashura the guardian of Ninshu, was still heavily unsure whether or not Ninshu would ever even survive without Indra's cooperation. The reason as to why is probably due to how when you analyze Hagoromo and his entire personality as laid out in both the 4 data book and his description and his introduction, he is a proponent of peace and order. Keep that in mind. And if you look at it, Kagi has intercourse with a human and her children are still very Ōtsutsuki-like, possessing horns, skin differences, etc. When Hagoromo is supposed to have had intercourse with a human, they possess 0 Ōtsutsuki traits. A little odd? Yeah. The 4 databook states that Indra was born from light, so it fits much more in Hagoromo's character to suggest that he just kind of spawned them in and created them that way compared to fertilization. This is why there's such a distinct talent difference and why the two are both sun and moon, when in fact it almost seems too good to be true. It's probably just because he created them. So, Indra is again a tactical mastermind who is a god of combat and war during his era, completely unparalleled. So his ability to comprehend and likely form counterattacks against forces like the FTG should be noted. Maybe more underhanded tactics like Tobirama's Bringer of Darkness could be utilized, as many people believe this was a jutsu created for the purpose of countering Madara's Sharingan, when in fact it's likely, or it's just equally likely, that it was created for revolting Uchiha like Setsuna, who planned to overthrow Tobirama according to the 3rd databook's mini character files. Indra is obviously, or kind of, an Uchiha with a Sharingan that's extremely adept without his MS, as for most of his life up until his final fight, Indra had the 3 Tomoe, which is what he would have used to clash blades with Ashura time after time again, as stated in the 4 databooks. So, Genjutsu is a no-go, and his Sharingan would allow for him to see attacks like the Deep Forest Bloom and counter these with a likely high-level fire style, as it would be the Uchiha genetics that hold a vast affinity for fire style, and then just to assume that Indra has it would be pretty conservative. When, I know I don't use the anime, but when the anime displays Indra showing his ninjutsu, it was a fire style, so yeah, he should have that, and potentially even an extremely notable version of something like Izanagi, as Itachi implies that through the passage of time, the usage of Izanagi has dwindled to just a few, but at one point, it was used numerous times per battle by numerous different Uchiha, and with that logic, it's probably not unlikely to then assume that Indra has it. For example, its potency through generations is just blatantly shown through Obito's several minutes against Konan, compared to Madara's version that was aided with a time delay spell which lasted long enough for his entire body to be brought back to Konoha and buried in a tomb deep within Konoha's mountains to become what Zetsu calls a treasure trove to other national shinobi, where his body would then be experimented on by Tobirama. Either way, it's not like Indra has to remain on the ground either. He does have a perfect Susanoo, likely even beyond Madara's, so for the Hokage, there really isn't much they can do. And while I'm not going to say he has the same abilities in the Susanoo as Sasuke, as we simply just don't know, and that's only the anime's filler interpretation. So, yeah, what are they going to do? Indra is kind of a different monster entirely. And with that, I hope that through today's video, you learned a little bit more about Indra in canon and how he actually was meant to be portrayed through both power and narrative-wise. Indra was a god of his era, even more so than someone like Hashirama due to the lack of formidability outside of Hagoromo's family. But whatever. If you guys did enjoy the video or maybe learned something, then please consider subscribing, as it helps me out a ton. And I do get comments of people saying that they thought they were subscribed when they weren't, so don't be like that. Anyway, more importantly to all that, God bless you all. Love you guys.